In this episode, we talk about how a weaker rupee affects you. We also talk about Tamil Nadu's CM N.K. Stalin convening a meeting of 44 parties that landed on the consensus of challenging the Election Commission's special intensive revision in the Supreme Court. But we begin today by talking about the protests happening in Uttarakhand as the state approaches its 25th year. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda and you are listening to 3 Things, the Indian Express news show. Later this week, on the 9th of November, Uttarakhand will celebrate 25 years of its formation. But as the state gears up for celebrations, many are concerned and have been protesting that even after a quarter of a century, Uttarakhand still lacks a robust healthcare infrastructure. These protests have been taking place in the district of Almora, where people have been flagging everything from a shortage of specialists to limited access to essential medical services. In this segment, we speak to the Indian Express's Aishwarya Raj, who begins by telling us how these protests began.
So there has been a consistent protest which was launched on October the 2nd by a few villagers of Chowkhutia in Almora. This was regarding a community health center in the village, and they demanded that they needed more specialists in the hospital, and they had said that there was just one MBBS doctor without any specialists carrying out services there. So the villagers had demanded that the hospital be equipped with a surgeon, a physician, as well as a gynecologist that they are authorized to get. And after a week or two of their protest, the CM of Uttarakhand, Pushkar Singh Dhami, he had promised that the community health center will be made into or will be upgraded to a sub-district hospital. And they have also promised or announced that the 30-bedded institution will be upgraded into a 50-bedded one. But the protesters were not assuaged by these announcements, and they have said that unless something concrete happens on the ground, they would still continue and go ahead with the protest. So now what they've done is they have decided to march to Dehradun, which is around 300 kilometers away from Chowkhutia, on foot and meet with the chief minister or even protest in front of his residence here.
And Aishwarya, what is the status of the healthcare system in the state? Tell us about the services that people have access to at the moment.
So the state does not perform really well when it comes to health services. We have come across recent reports that say that people are dying in between while they are being transported to a different healthcare center. So we have seen a lot of reports saying that there is a huge referral rate in the local institutions of the state. Right now, the hill state stands at a place where it has 578 primary health centers, 81 community health centers, 21 sub-district hospitals, and 13 district hospitals. We have 13 districts here, and that is how the healthcare system is present. And this is for over 1 crore of its population. But we have also seen time and again people complaining that one of the reasons for emigration from the hills is healthcare. And as per the health department, the state has allocated rupees 4,000 crore for health and possesses 2 MRIs, 23 CT scans, 73 ultrasound, and 117 X-ray machines. So that's how the facilities are present, or that's what the state possesses in terms of infrastructure.
And we understand that there were 2 CAG audits that revealed more about the shortage of doctors and some more concerns as well.
The Comptroller and the Auditor General report that you have mentioned, this was released earlier this year in February 2025 and is based on the audit that happened between 2016 and 2021, which spoke particularly about the recruitment policy and how understaffed these institutions are. So even though there was a recruitment policy for the general duty medical officers requiring MBBS qualification, there was no specific policy for specialist doctors recruitment. And this is one of the reasons why Chowkhutia residents are actually protesting. The CAG report also confirms this in a way, and it has said that there is a shortage of doctors amounting to 94% in CHCs, 45% in sub-district hospitals, and 30% in district hospitals. And this is based on the Indian Public Health Standards norms. And another particularly disturbing fact is that there is a stark difference in the availability of doctors between plains and hills. So in the plain districts, we see a 50% shortage. So this is including the capital city, Dehradun, where there was a 35% crunch. And in the hill districts, there are 19 hill districts in the state, this shortage was very apparent, or this shortage was alarming. It reached 70%. And if to give an example, Chamoli, one of the hill districts, remote hill districts in the state, it had a 75% shortage of doctors.
So the shortage of doctors is a major concern in the state.
Yeah, it's also not just doctors, it's also a nurse shortage. So we can see that there is the health personnel shortage, or there is a dearth in the number of people deployed in these districts. To give some context to this, there's a transfer policy in Uttarakhand which says that there should be a mandatory transfer after 4 years from EC access areas, that is plain areas, to those in tough terrains. But this was also relaxed in Uttarakhand. So that also was disturbing, because this ensured that there was a healthy movement of doctors or transfer of personnel. That was also not found in the CAG report. And another CAG report, like you mentioned, this is from another time period. This was between 2014 and 19. This was also a survey based of 6 hospitals across Almora, Haridwar, Uttam Singh Nagar and Chamoli. And it was released in 2021. This revealed the infrastructural lapses in the state. So it had said that ICU facility was not available in 2 hospitals. So there were just 6 hospitals surveyed and 2 hospitals did not have ICU facility. And also the audit observed that all the hospitals failed to provide accident and trauma or psychiatry services during the period under the study. So these are the 2 reports that show the glaring problems in the state.
So Aishwarya, this was about the doctors. What about the kind of services that the people have access to in the state?
To understand that, I think it's important to put it in context to understand how health services are being performed or carried out in these areas. So there is this Lancet study, which is based on a longitudinal survey of India from 2017 to 18. And it found that Uttarakhand had 29.2% of its inpatient visits, patients visiting for an overnight stay at a hospital. Only 29% of people visited hospitals within 10 kilometers. And we see that over 36% of the inpatient visits were in facilities over 60 kilometers away. So this was attributed to the tough terrain and the geographical challenges in the hill states. And we can also see other states, like geographically similar states like Sikkim and Himachal Pradesh being having similar or even worse rates than Uttarakhand. But we also see that Uttarakhand doesn't perform as badly as other states when it comes to outpatient visits. So under this category, Uttarakhand performed better because it had at least 60% of its outpatient visits within the facilities that are within 10 kilometers from where the patient stayed. So if we are to add on to this, to understand the health facilities and infrastructure of the state, we'll have to look at the indices, including childbirths and institutional births, and how Uttarakhand as a state fare on par with other states. So we have found that even though 80% of births in rural Uttarakhand were institutional, only 53% of births occurred in public facilities. So this is a data from National Family Health Survey 5. And we've also seen that 4.4% of the births occurred at home under a skilled professional in rural areas. So this was quite different, or this was a stark figure in comparison with the urban regions, because they had 1.3% of births conducted at home.
And so, considering this, can you tell us what that indicates about the state's overall preparedness and the strength of its healthcare system?
So we see that fewer people are going to a public health facility for childbirth. And just to take this figure, 53% of births occurred in public facility. That means that even though 80% of total births are institutional, only 53% go to the public facility. Rest are opting for a private facility, private hospital. And in these remote hilly districts, hilly areas, we do not find as many private hospitals as well. So that shows that people come down from hills to the plains. Like if they're in Kumaon, they have to come down to Haldwani, and there are a few good private hospitals there. And if they're in Garhwal, they have to come down to Dehradun to avail such services. So that shows that there is this arduous task for them to come down from their hilly areas because of lack of proper facilities there.
Right. So, Aishwarya, you talked about shortage of doctors, lack of access to healthcare services, and then there was childbirth. What are some other concerns that the people have been raising?
So, to give you an example from the conversation that I had with one of the protesters, so they were citing this news or this report that had recently happened. So in July, we saw a 1-year-old boy dying in Uttarakhand because he was not promptly given health services. He was not given treatment. So he had suffered from severe dehydration. He went to his PHC, which did not offer him any service, and he had to go to the CHC and then another sub-district hospital. So he was referred to 5 hospitals across 4 districts. And then he got treatment at Nainital's Haldwani, and he died 6 days later at the ICU. So there are instances which prompt people to undertake such protests because the services, the infrastructure has not developed despite it being 25 years after the state formation. So what they refrain is that state was formed for these things, that they get better infrastructure in hilly areas, that there is better development or better services in hills, because that is one of the reasons why they protested against the the UP government, because there was little notice paid to the development in the hills. So what they're saying is, after 25 years of the state being formed, they still find these instances where there is this lacunae by the government, that there is no attention paid to these matters.
And next we talk about the Indian rupee, which has been on a slippery slope lately. This year, up until the 28th of October, the rupee has lost about 3.1% against the US dollar. What's noteworthy is that this slide has come at a time when the US dollar itself has weakened against most major currencies. Now, this development has made headlines, as it usually does whenever the rupee falls. But the real question is, why does this matter? How does a weaker rupee actually affect you? In this segment, we bring to you a conversation from our archives between my colleague Shashank Bhargava and the Indian Express's Udit Misra, who writes on economy for the paper. Here's Udit.
Okay, so there are 2 levels at which this affects us. One is obviously the economics of it. Basically, rupee's exchange rate against dollar or any other currency falling basically means that now you need more rupees to buy a single unit of dollar. And why do you need a single unit of dollar? Because when you import anything, from a product to a service to wanting to invest in US or any other country, you would have to buy dollars because they are not using rupees. So you'll have to give your rupees, buy some dollars, then use those dollars to buy that product or service. Now, when the rupee exchange rate vis-a-vis dollar falls, essentially everything that you want to buy from outside becomes costly if it is being bought in dollars. Now, there are things that are being bought in dollars from whenever we buy something from US, say an Apple computer, or else it could also be that you are paying some other country, but you're paying in dollars because the dollar is the reserve currency. It's the global currency. So, for example, crude oil payments typically are measured in dollars. So you're paying dollars, and essentially that means that everything, all your imports become costlier. There is a flip side on the economics of this, is that when the imports become costlier, your exports become cheaper also. So if you were selling an Indian product or Indian service, it is now cheaper for an American to buy. And as such, it's more attractive. So if he was wondering whether to buy a shoe made in India or a shoe made in Vietnam, and now it's much cheaper to buy a shoe made in India, then your exports rise. So that's the benefit of that. That's the economic argument.
Okay, so to be clear, with the fall of the rupee, things coming from the US become more expensive for people. But since oil is also traded in dollars, things in general could become more expensive. But on the other hand, it could be a good thing for some businesses that export, because now they will potentially sell more items.
Yeah, broadly speaking, what you're saying is right. For a country like India, which imports 80% of its oil, and that's a very crucial factor, inflation is likely to go up because we pay in dollars, it's an international price, and that will all seep into our domestic inflation. So everything will become costlier. For most exporters, the argument that I mentioned would hold that your exports are now more attractive, you might benefit. However, not all exports are made of only domestic products. Often you import a lot of raw materials or intermediate materials to make the product. Now, a rupee fall would actually make your intermediate imports costlier. So often it is the dynamics of how you price your product and what are the constituents that will determine. But yeah, broadly speaking, that is the dynamics.
And how is the exchange rate calculated? What factors determine whether a rupee falls or becomes stronger?
So it's simply a demand supply thing. When we talk about an exchange rate, say between dollar and rupee, we are basically looking at how many dollars are demanded in all transactions and how many rupees are demanded in all transactions. So Indians in any year, any quarter, Indians are demanding a lot of American goods and products denominated in dollar. And the rest of the world or Americans are demanding Indian products denominated in rupee. And there is an exchange based on that. If you are demanding in a particular time period, you're demanding more products which are in dollars, so you're needing more dollars, and the demand for rupee doesn't go up, then the rupee depreciates. So on paper, that is how it functions. But unlike a free market economy where this is solely decided on demand and supply for dollars and rupees, in India, RBI has a certain role to play. What RBI typically does is that it intervenes from time to time to ensure that the fluctuations in rupees value vis-a-vis dollar or other currencies do not happen too wildly, because wild fluctuations will be detrimental for all economic activity. And what RBI does is that, for example, when there's lots of rupee being demanded, right, and a lot of people want to invest in India or buy Indian products and a lot of dollars are coming into India to do that, what RBI does is that it takes out those dollars from the market. How does it take out the dollars? It buys those dollars from the market. And it buys those dollars by paying rupees. So rupees flood into the market. And that's how the demand supply mismatch is taken care of. And rupee does not appreciate as much as it would have. And whatever RBI does, either to ensure that rupee doesn't depreciate too much or appreciate too much, it has its own ramifications in terms of whether we are accumulating foreign reserves or getting rid of our foreign reserves.
And in the end, we talk about the Pan-India Special Intensive Revision. Yesterday, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin convened a meeting of 44 parties where a broad opposition consensus emerged to challenge the Election Commission of India's Special Intensive Revision of electoral polls in the Supreme Court. The parties called the revision undemocratic and warned that it could lead to large-scale deletions of voters before the 2026 assembly polls. The meeting consisted of parties from across the political spectrum, including the DMDK, which is not in any alliance. Meanwhile, the AIADMK and the BJP were not invited, and actor Vijay's TVK and PMK and AMMK were asked to attend but stayed away from it. The Indian Express's Arun Janardhanan writes that a resolution adopted at the meeting urged the Election Commission to suspend the SIR, arguing that the revision was proceeding even though the Supreme Court has yet to rule on the legality of Bihar's recently concluded SIR. Parties said that the process should be taken up only after correcting design flaws and ideally after the 2026 elections. The resolution accused the Commission of acting in alignment with the BJP-led union government and claimed that the revision could disproportionately remove voters from the minority and opposition-backed communities. The state government also highlighted logistical hurdles. With the northeast monsoon set to run through much of the revision window, which is between 4th of November and 4th of December, officials argued that the field verification would be difficult, especially in rural and flood-prone regions. The resolution suggested that the exercise appeared geared towards large-scale deletions rather than cleaning the rolls. Janardhanan notes that even though the TVK did not attend the meeting, it issued a forceful statement supporting legal action against the SIR while sharply criticizing the DMK's political narrative. The party recalled that it had objected to the SIR when it was first ordered in Bihar and said that heavy deletions there proved its earlier concerns right. It questioned the timing of the second phase while the Supreme Court case is still pending and asked how 6.36 crore voter entries in Tamil Nadu could be verified in just 30 days. TVK also accused DMK of opportunism, arguing that it had failed to raise the issue when the Bihar SIR was announced and had not passed a resolution in the assembly, unlike Kerala. The party said that the existing annual revision mechanism was adequate and outlined steps such as correcting errors through standard forms, adding new voters, removing duplicate or deceased names, allowing Aadhaar card as an identity and age document, improving data formats for agents, and ensuring searchable online roles. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Niharika, Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.